How's that work for you?
Perfect.
Cool.
Oh god, expensive stuff.
I'm rolling, so ready.
Ready?
Ready?
Okay.
Yeah, you guys are cool.
All right, sounds good.
So we're going counterclockwise?
Clockwise.
Clockwise, yeah, we're gonna go around that way, so, yeah. So, all right, well, I'm Brett with The Inner Gamer, and we have Dennis here, who is inducted into the Esports Hall of Fame. So, how does it feel?
It feels great, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, I think the cool part is really just my small contribution to the birth and growth of esports will be remembered someday, which is obviously something pretty cool to have. You know, especially as esports is growing as much as it is right now. You know, it's just something pretty cool to have remembered.
Very cool. So, how do you feel about the growth of esports and how it's starting to get exposed into, you know, it's starting to show up on ESPN and it's starting to gain worldwide traction? How do you see that, and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, was it 20 years ago, I kind of dreamed that, you know, esports and stuff would fill stadiums and sell out sports venues, and you know, it's pretty cool to see it actually happening now.
Oh yeah.
You know, I think most of the growth seems to have happened just in the last few years. You know, it was kind of like a growth, and then it kind of died off a little bit, and growth, and died off a little bit, and now it actually seems to have a self-sustaining, organically growing, you know, business and viewership, which is really, really cool. So yeah, I mean, I think from that respect, it's pretty awesome to see something that, you know, when I first started, I remember the very first esports event was in 1995. It was a Doom 2 tournament that Microsoft threw. And there were maybe, you know, 100, 200 spectators by the end of the tournament.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's obviously very different now than at least the beginning of it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, that's on you guys.
Okay. How did you find out that you would be in the Hall of Fame?
I found out, I think it was either someone from the ESL or someone from the Esports Hall of Fame just sent me an email, to be honest. I think I had heard of it very lightly when Heaton was inducted, who was the Counter-Strike player. You know, it's not like, it's pretty new, you know, so it's not like I was, you know, holding my breath to be inducted into Hall of Fame. There really was no such thing last year.
Yeah.
But you know, when I heard about it, and you know, certainly the venue at QuakeCon seemed pretty fitting and really good timing.
We're doing just one each, or how?
You need to go two.
Oh,
Two.
so
if
you
you
said
want.
beta two, so yeah, that was pretty quick. So, okay, you used to play a lot of Quake. What games are you playing nowadays?
The games that I've been playing lately, well, so lately it's
Sultry.
so the games that I've been playing lately, Overwatch. That's actually pretty recent, just in the last few weeks.
Okay.
But you know, it's kind of like the amalgamation of all of the shooters, you know, and MOBAs kind of come together. It's kind of how I felt about it. You know, obviously, the first champion I played was Pharah, which is kind of a no-brainer. And you know, I'd like to think I was pretty decent at it right off the get-go. You know, McCree, I think, it kind of felt like a Quick 2 railgun to me. So it also felt, you know, pretty natural. You know, outside of Overwatch, I also play Clash Royale. Pretty hardcore in that, actually. I think I'm the top-ranked level 11 player in the world. And the highest I've reached was level, I think, rank 9 in the world was probably the highest I reached in that game. So I'm still pretty competitive when it comes to gaming. And then, you know, I still occasionally play League here and there. So I would say League was probably the game that dominated most of my game time. for the better part of a couple of years. I mean, it's pretty casual in the way that I played it. I played a lot of ARAM, just playing with my friends at Riot. Yeah, that was pretty fun too, League. In that, they got me watching the LCS and following kind of that part of esports. And League is always pretty funny because, number one, there's a champion, Thresh, that was named after me, which 99.9% of the players don't know. Number two, they actually were nice enough to give me the Thresh username. So when I play League, I play as Thresh, and I think I'm the only non-Riot employee that has a champion username. But it has its pros and cons because number one, as a FPS duelist, support is just not in my nature. So and Thresh is a support champion. So I actually don't play Thresh, when I play League. So I always get trolled by people like, why aren't you playing Thresh, Thresh? And then I made fun of my buddies at Riot because I don't know if you guys actually play League, but there's a champion in League of Legends named Tristana, which has a rocket jump. It's a sharpshooter. So I always rib them because I'm like, dude, I should have Tristana's kit. Thresh should have Tristana's kit, not be a support. Anyway, that's a long-winded answer to
That's good.
to a question.
All right. Shifting it back over to FPSs, you're credited as one of the first people to basically popularize the now standard WSAD control scheme. Did you ever think that one day that would become basically the new standard for practically everything?
No, obviously not. I mean, but when I was playing in the early days, at least, people were using some pretty weird, wacky configurations. In fact, my brother, who was one of the top players, used to use. He was probably one of the first people to use like a trackball and keyboard, which I used to make fun of him all the time because it's pretty hard to aim with a trackball. And people used to use the arrow keys or ESDF or some weird funky stuff. But I would say I knew I had some impact on what people were doing because even today it's always like what's your config, what are your settings, what's your mouse and keyboard. Those are the pretty common questions that people used to ask me. At one point in Quake 2, in its development, John Carmack, I did software. I think I was helping them do some multiplayer balancing for Quake 2, and he knew that everyone used to always ask me what my config was. So as a way of thanking me for helping them kind of balance Quake 2, he ended up building thresh.config into Quake 2, which meant that I could sit down at any PC and just type exec thresh.config in the console, and it would just load up my config. And I think that saved me a lot of time having to answer people, because I'd be like, every time they'd like, Thresh, what config do you use? I'm like, just type exec thresh.config and get it, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But I think that may have contributed to its popularity as well.
And what are your thoughts on the upcoming Quake Champions, since I believe it enters open beta in 2017?
So I've only seen the trailer so far. I was gonna go check it out yesterday, but I think Tim had just stepped out, and so I didn't get a chance to go play it. Hopefully I'll have a chance to play it later today. For me, you don't really know what a game's like until you spend at least 30 minutes to an hour really playing it. Because for games like that, it's really about how crisp does it feel? Is there any input lag? A lot of the physics, all of that kind of stuff. How fast do the weapons switch? All of that, all of those small nuances, you really can't appreciate just by watching a trailer. Honestly, no competitive player really cares about graphics. So yeah, it looks beautiful, but within probably 30 minutes of playing the game, I won't notice any of it. Or I would have turned down most of them. So I think it's TBD, but from what I've seen and from what I've heard, it's like a throwback to the old shooters, which is obviously something that I appreciate a lot.
First question is a bit of a two-parter. At what age did you realize, like, I am good at video games? And second part of that is, what was it like having that much attention, being so young? You were maybe 16, 17, when you really got popular, people knew who you were. So at what age did you realize, I'm good at this? And then how was that pressure like, you know, being so known and within the gaming circle?
Yeah. I think I probably realized that was good. Actually, I actually remember specifically when it was. So, you know, growing up, I had an older brother of 3 years and a younger brother of 3 years. I'm the middle child, and we used to play together all the time. We had 2, 3 computers at home at any given time. And my older brother used to beat up on me, both physically and in the game, right? As all older brothers do. But I was just a pure keyboard player, and he was, as I mentioned earlier, he was the trackball and keyboard player, and you know that alone was enough to enable him to beat me, because I had a fixed rate of turning, which is pretty stupid. And so finally, I think it was like one summer. And I think I was probably probably junior high or high school. I said, you know what? I had enough. Like, I know I could beat him because our games were super tight. And, you know, I was just really like, I was kind of stubborn. I was like, oh God, I don't have to learn a new, configuration. I was stuck on the keyboard thing. But I just finally, I realized that I hit my ceiling. So that summer, I made the switch. And I actually literally, I don't think I ever lost after I made that switch. Like, it was like I started crushing my brother. He stopped wanting to play against me. And then, online, I made such a big jump in terms of, like I literally just never lost. But it's not like there were like pro competitions and stuff happening all the time. I just started building up a name because, I never lost. And, on the server that I was playing on, people from around the nation would log into that server and challenge me, and, I beat all of them. And so I built up a pretty big name, at least in the online world. And then Microsoft, through what I believe is the very first esports competition. It was called Deathmatch 95. It was like they found regional players from all around the nation, plus the UK. I think it was like 20-something of us. Flew us to Microsoft headquarters in Redmond, Washington, and there was a stage set up. It was like $10,000 worth of prizes, and we competed till the wee hours in the morning, and I ended up winning that one. But there were literally probably about 200 people that still watched till the end. And I remember Jay Wilbur, who was I think he was at id Software at the time, the CEO of id. We ran into each other a few months back, and we're like, dude, that was literally the very first esports event, which is pretty crazy to think about.
And then the second question, you had a very unique and distinct play style. Is there anyone playing today with a Quake or Doom that you feel matches or exceeds your skill?
I think probably one of the closest to it now would be like Rafa, or, obviously I think during those days there was the concept of like controlling a map, starving your opponent of resources, like all of that kind of stuff was relatively new. So now everyone does it, right? They've taken it to obviously far greater degree than I did. But yeah, I would say Rafa, and then before Rafa, there were guys like 0-4 and stuff that played in a very similar play style. Like my play style was very fluid. I didn't really rely on aim. It was really about outthinking, outpositioning, outsmarting my opponents. And there's definitely players now that seem to focus on that as well.
We'll go back to one question per person, that way everybody can kind of get their
Get
hand in there a little bit more.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you a little bit about Xfire. I know you co-founded Xfire back in the day, and I use Xfire. That was like my go-to program for years upon years.
Yeah.
I lived and breathed through Xfire. How did that conception, or how did that
about?
the idea come about, and what did the early days look like?
Yeah, I mean, most, every company or product that I started is really just to solve my own personal frustrations as a gamer. I always felt like PC gamers in particular were neglected in a lot of the tools. And Xfire, its genesis was, I don't know how many of you kind of date back to those years, but the way that you would typically play with a friend or play with friends, you would first load up a server browser. I think at the time it was like GameSpy or AllSeeing, one of those. And then you'd find a server to play on. This could be any game like Quake or Counter-Strike or whatever. You log into the server, then you would have to cut and paste the 17-digit IP address. Alt tab out, send an AOL instant message to your buddy, yo, here, come join me, and hope that he makes it into the server before it fills up.
Right.
And I always, I just felt like it was ass backwards. And then also, it used to bug the hell out of me, with AOL instant messenger or whatever, it would have that little flashing window and it'd pop you out of a game, so you could be in the middle of a match and then it steals the focus away from your full screen app and you get plopped out into the desktop at the worst possible moment.
Yeah.
So, I really wanted to build something that fixed all of those issues. And no one would actually appreciate, AOL Instant Messenger would never have done that, right? So I knew we had to build it from scratch. At Xfire, we literally invented the concept of a buddy list where you actually can see the game that they're playing. That did not exist. Steam has all this stuff now, but
Right.
Back there was nothing that had that. So the concept of your status being the game that you're playing and being able to see what your friends are playing. We invented that. We invented the ability to just one click and join whatever server your buddy's on. We invented the concept of an in-game overlay. So all of these applications that have things that pop up like Steam, someone sends you a message, it just pops up in the game while you're playing. You don't have to all tab out. Or we invented that at Xfire as well. Again, we didn't expect it to be as successful as it was. We literally just built it for ourselves.
Right.
And it just worked out.
Okay. Did you play much of the new Doom, and do you see any room for improvement in the multiplayer?
I kind of skipped the new Doom, to be honest. And I think I skipped it because my friends told me that the multiplayer wasn't that great. And I have limited time, to play. So I guess as I said, I was kind of playing League and mostly League actually for a while. So when I heard it wasn't that great, and I'm the kind of guy where I don't really play. I'm not the type that plays multiple games at the same time typically. When I get into a game, I'm all in the game, and that's how I feel like I can improve the most. I'm not for me, context shifting to different games is not ideal, because I feel like a lot of learning and improvement happens kind of subconsciously. You go, at least for me, I'll play a bunch of matches, and then I'm taking a shower and something just clicks, and the next time I start playing, I'm just way better. But that only happens for me if I'm fully immersed in the game, because there's being really good is really, other than learning all the maps and stuff, there's all these tiny nuances that the average person doesn't really notice. That when you add them all up is what makes it a good player, a great player.
So, haven't really spent a whole lot of time with the new Doom, but now that you're involved in businesses and Raptor, do you still find yourself? Do you still have time to revisit the old Doom and old Quake?
Generally not. Although I think it was probably a month or two ago. The PC Gamer reached out to me, and they're like, "Hey, I think it was the 10th anniversary, I think, or 20th, 10th or 20th anniversary of Quake. Well, whatever it was, they're like, hey, we're putting up a Quake server, a Quake World server, and we're gonna be live streaming it, and we're inviting, we're gonna tweet, that it's live, and you can come play with, the PC Gamer staff and stuff." and they're like, would you want to come just log in for like an hour and play? So I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So I actually installed Quake World, hopped on the server and played probably for an hour, and it felt great. It's still an incredibly fun game to play. Like there's still not a whole lot of games that are like it, in my opinion. Part of the beauty of Quake to me was that it was not perfectly balanced in terms of weapons and stuff. And I think that's what made it both challenging to play and fun to play.
So it's pretty funny. So on social media, a lot we see the pictures of 4 images, and it says one has to go. So you have to choose those images, and one of those images you feel as if you can live without. So if you had to choose between Doom and Quake, one has to go, and why?
If I had to choose one to go, it would be Doom. Just because those are like the super early days of online gaming. Now, I mean, Doom is probably the single reason why I got into gaming. Because I actually was not a traditional, I didn't play any of the consoles. I wasn't into Mario Brothers. I really wasn't even into single player games. Like, I actually don't think I ever finished Doom or Quake single player. So what drew me to these games was the ability to play against a real person in real time, which Doom was one of the first to introduce that concept. But Quake is where I won the Ferrari. And Quake is really where I think where I became truly famous, at least in the gaming community. And so I couldn't possibly not have that one.
Gotcha.
A good one. So we talked a little bit about your thoughts on Quake Champions, but is there any game coming out in the future that you're really excited about or looking forward to in any way?
As I said, I'm really I'm generally like a one game kind of guy at any given time. Right now, I'm really into Overwatch. So when I'm into a game, I don't really think about other ones, and I don't dabble in other ones as well.
Yeah.
Clash Royale's on my phone, so I don't think it really counts. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I mean, in general, so my gaming tastes have changed a little bit. Now I actually do play single player games because it's easier to just stop whenever you want to. So like the single player games that I traditionally have loved are like the Fallout series. So I played a bunch of Fallout 4. Like those kind of games.
Is there any match like through all your years of gaming and all your tournaments that really stuck with you?
I mean, there's a handful. I don't know. I mean, if there was one, obviously it would be the Ferrari one, just because that was not right. I won a Ferrari, and I was like 17 years old. But there were a couple tournaments where, for a long time, I literally just never lost. I never lost in practice against any of my teammates who were also the top players. There was literally not one time in practice that I ever lose to any teammate or practice partner. And these are other top 5, top 10 players in the world. But I did lose in tournament. I lost effectively a set. I got dropped to the low bracket, which I was on such a big streak that it was pretty shocking. But it was I think the one that I remember was in the PGL, which is like one of the first professional gamers leagues, and I was playing Quake 2. I was playing Quake 2 1-on-1 in the finals, Quake 1 teams, and I was just messing around. I was playing in the StarCraft competition as well. So I ended up placing I think it was top 8 or top 16 in StarCraft. And then I played my Quake teams finals, and we won that. And then I had to immediately, literally the very next minute, I had to play Quake 2 1-on-1. and it just like shifting between those physics engines and stuff, because Quake 2 was like not as crisp. Like just completely threw my game out of whack. Like I couldn't rocket jump, like literally, because like all the mechanics and physics were different. So I lost that match, or that game. I got dropped in the lower bracket, and I was so pissed. I remember, and luckily the next day I didn't have to make that switch. So I was in the lower bracket. Quake Teams was done, and then I came back and played the other player. His name was Immortal, and I just crushed him. Like I think the final match was like 56-0 or something, because I literally just practiced Quake 2 all night, and then I came in and destroyed him. But it's memorable just because obviously I didn't lose that often. But if there was one singular one, it would obviously be the Ferrari tournament, because the Ferrari tournament was interesting because I think one of my key advantages is I don't actually get nervous. I'm really able to compartmentalize really well. But in the Ferrari tournament, we were in a booth at E3, and I think it was the final match. Like the Ferrari was in the booth along with the computers. So when you're walking by, you see it. But I remember the final match. It was literally 10 seconds left. I think I was up 13 to -1. So I knew I had it in the bag, and there was a countdown on the monitor. And I remember at that very moment, so I hadn't been nervous through the whole tournament. I realized I was going to win, and for the first time, I actually noticed that the Ferrari was sitting right behind me, and I could see the reflection of the Ferrari in the monitor. And it was counting down the last 10 seconds of the match, and I started shaking. I was like, "Holy crap!" So I actually started feeling really nervous because I realized I had won, and I also realized I didn't know how to drive stick. so I was trying to figure out how I was going to get that thing home.
Wow.
Tell them how you did get it home.
What's that?
Tell them how you did get it home.
Oh yeah. So I'm from California, and I think I was actually living at home at the time, and so that E3 happened to be in Atlanta. So I literally had no idea how I was going to get that thing home, and so I was like, taking pictures and stuff. John Carmack was there. He handed me the keys, and he was, we knew each other, right? I mean, because I was the champion of like all his games. He's like, Dennis, like, how are you getting this car home? He's like, you live in California, right? I was like, yeah. I was like, I have no idea, man. And he's like, he's like, okay, just hang tight. So he like disappears for, I don't know, whatever, 20, 30 minutes, and he comes back, and he literally hands me 10 grand in cash. He's like, this should handle shipping for you. And it wasn't actually officially part of the prize. So he was just like, just,
Awesome.
that should help you send this thing home. Which what I did, I think it cost like $4 grand or $5 grand to ship that thing. So yeah, I certainly needed it.
Yeah, you got some extra cash.
Yeah.
Do you still have it?
No, I kept it for 10 years. So I kept it for 10 years. But it wasn't an ordinary Ferrari. So John Carmack, he put, I don't know, between probably close to $100,000 into the car, modifying the hell out of it. So it was like a rocket. So it was a heavily modified Ferrari. Had been the front page of a bunch of magazines, car mags and stuff. So the irony, so I had it, and number one, it was too flashy for me. So my personality is not like a red convertible, like uber loud car. It just wasn't a great fit. I happen to live literally less than a minute drive from the Ferrari dealership of San Francisco at the time, like literally a minute. So the first time I drove my car there to get serviced, and they popped the hood, and they're like, we don't recognize any parts in this car. Like literally, they're like, we can't service this car. Like we don't recognize, like half the stuff is in here. So the only way I could get it serviced, I had to ship it to Texas. I mean, I used to ship it like basically here to this shop that basically did all the mods, and then we did like a world famous Ferrari mod shop, but I had to basically ship it here just to get it serviced and then ship it back. So it was like whatever, 5-10 grand a year to do that. So that got pretty tiring pretty fast.
That wasn't worth it.
So then I put it on blocks and I had it installed in the lobby of our office. So that's where it's at for probably 4 or 5 years. And then when we were moving offices, I was like, dude, I can't keep this thing. Like, you know, I would have liked to keep it. I just had really no place to put it. So I eventually sold it to a collector. Yeah.
I think that's about all the time we have.
Cool.
Nice.
Cool. All right.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you so much, man.
All right, appreciate it.
And the ceremony will be during the finals party tonight. So.
At 7, right?
I think it starts around 6, yeah.
6 to 10.
Nice. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Enjoy.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
Thanks. We'll get another Ferrari tonight. Yeah, sure.